For thousands of years, humans have manipulated the natural selection process to preserve favorable traits in their pets, crops, and livestock.
Our planet hosts millions of different species. All of these organisms compete for limited resources as they struggle to survive. Nature favors organisms that are best suited for their environment. Those who survive reproduce, ensuring favorable traits are passed down to the next generation. When humans control who reproduces, it's called selective breeding or artificial selection. By choosing who will produce the next generation, breeders select which traits will be passed down and which traits will be eliminated. In just a few generations, natural variations can be exaggerated to produce plants and animals with superior traits. Both natural and artificial selection rely on principles of inheritance for maintaining favorable traits from one generation to the next, and both produce the same outcome: change over time. But there is an important difference between artificial and natural selection. One is goal-directed and one is not. People have a goal in mind when they select breeding individuals. They are trying to improve the appearance or performance of a species in a specific way. In nature, there is no goal and no agenda other than survival. Dogs are the descendants of Eurasian gray wolves and were domesticated more than 15,000 years ago. Since then, dogs have been selectively bred for hunting, herding, and companionship. Today, there are hundreds of dog breeds, each different from the other in appearance and behavior. And because breeders don't necessarily select traits needed for survival, dogs and other domesticated species are usually less fit than their ancestors for living in the wild. Wild horses were domesticated as early as 6,000 years ago along trade routes between Europe and Asia. Many breeds have since been developed, each specialized for performing a useful task. Light, agile horses with a trainable disposition were bred for riding and transportation. Large, heavy horses were bred to pull a farmer's plow and wagon or to hold the weight of an armored knight in warfare. And since the invention of the automobile and tractor, breeders have primarily focused on producing athletic horses for racing and other sports. Humans have been keeping bees and collecting their honey for more than 4,000 years. Selective breeding has made the honeybee more gentle, more resistant to disease, and better at producing large quantities of high-quality honey. Most of our food comes from animals and plants that have been modified through selective breeding. Among other farm animals, such as chickens, sheep, and pigs, cattle have been bred to improve meat quality and increase milk production. Cows were domesticated 8,000 years ago from a species of wild cattle called auroch. Modern cattle still prefer to live in herds, but are now significantly smaller in size, much less fierce, and have the ability to digest grass. Farmers have bred cultivated plants to increase quality, produce higher yields, and improve resistance to drought, disease, and insects. The wild cabbage plant has given rise to many different vegetables. Breeders selected flower characteristics to produce broccoli and cauliflower. They selected for leaf and stem traits to produce cabbage, kale, Brussels sprouts, and kohlrabi. Modern corn looks a little like its wild ancestor, teosinte, a grass that grows wild in Mexico and Central America. Bush-like teosinte plants lack a cob and produce relatively few seed kernels. Moreover, each seed is protected by a tough and thick outer shell. In contrast, modern corn has tall, narrow stalks that allow plants to grow close together in a field. Soft, exposed seed kernels are plentiful and grow on large, easy-to-harvest cobs. Selective breeding practices intrigued the young Charles Darwin. A popular hobby in 19th century England was pigeon keeping. Pigeons were bred to improve their speed, endurance, homing instinct, and beauty. Each of the hundreds of pigeon varieties could be traced back to one common ancestor, the wild rock pigeon. Darwin reasoned that if the process of artificial selection could produce such dramatic changes in a species of domestic bird, then the process of natural selection could change species as well. During a sea voyage that took him to the Galapagos Islands, Darwin observed different populations of wild finches. These birds had a variety of beak shapes. Some beaks were good at cracking hard seeds, while others were best for catching insects or accessing food in a flower. Darwin concluded that a natural selection process had favored certain variations in beak shape to promote survival in different environments. The different finch populations all shared a common ancestor, but their beaks had diversified and changed over time. Darwin called this change evolution. Today we know that when breeders select traits in dogs, pigeons, or corn, they are actually tinkering with genes. In just a few thousand years, humans have introduced significant changes into many species through the process of artificial selection. In a similar manner, natural selection has generated millions of new and wonderful species throughout Earth's long history.